This video is sponsored by Dibbly Create. Get a 7-day free trial of the Pro plan when you visit dalelinks.com/dibblycreate. Can artificial intelligence actually write a book that's not total trash? AI-generated content tends to have a few problems, and that includes being stilted, overly wordy, redundancies, and sometimes contains inaccuracies or outright false information. So how do you combat these issues? Human intervention. Why? Well, AI-generated content requires the same energy and attention that human-generated content does. Just because a machine spit it out doesn't necessarily mean that you should be publishing it into the world without first of all scrutinizing it, the same way you would if you wrote it yourself. Yes, it can seem like it's perfect the way it is. It comes out, oh, this is great. But in practice, there's still some debatable areas here when it comes to AI content generation, and not to mention, it helps to just kind of put your fingerprints into the work. Get it to where it is more readable and it's more human-like, and then your readers are going to be ultimately happy at the end of the day. Let's catch everyone up about where I was in the previous video in this 6-part series here. So what did I produce originally? Because I did use Dibbly Create's content writer to make a nonfiction book. It was actually about homesteading, and I have to tell you that this is just kind of a loose little fun hobby of mine. I'm not a very big homesteader. There is just some elements that I enjoy about it. But then it occurred to me, was it any good? Yeah, sure, the content was good that came out from it, but I have to admit to you that I really wanted to kind of give you guys a look at what I'm working on as we're going along in the process. And then when we're done actually distributing the work, you would have the opportunity to actually read it and be of some value. And I know there's probably a fraction of you out there that might enjoy reading a book about homesteading, but I thought what would be a better tool that could help out authors. So this is why I decided to change since the last video. And since the last video, I thought, well, I do videos for authors and publishers out there, so why don't I make a resource that would be good for them? So this is why I decided to pivot and write a whole new manuscript. Now you're probably saying, Dale, what'd you do with that homesteading book? It's collecting digital dust. Maybe I'll go in and edit it someday and do something with it, but for right now, it's no loss at this point. I'm more excited about sharing something about the craft of writing, because I thought, why don't we see about doing something that you guys would find value in, at least that I would find value in. So I researched my niche with Dibbly Create's research tool for Amazon search term analysis with the focus on writing. Next, I used the title generator with the keyword writing book. I sorted through the options and landed on Fiction Writing, a practical guide for crafting your first novel. Really kind of neat. They gave me a number of different titles that I can kind of choose from and subtitles. The title I kind of landed on because I just wanted to keep it simple. I wanted to learn about fiction writing. The second portion of that would actually validate and confirm what this would be exactly about. So from that point, I used the outline generator where I plugged in all the details I had up to this point, plus a summary of my book, which I just kind of whipped something together real fast. Now, I wanted to shoot for a light read at around 10 chapters with about 30,000 words. Once I had all that information gathered, all I had to do was open Content Writer, then copy and paste all the relevant details for each chapter from the outline. Now keep in mind, if you're producing a nonfiction book, you'll need to generate one chapter at a time and need to separate the introduction and conclusion from the main content. I selected the lowest word count range between about 1,600 and 2,200 words, while including research for this. Now I found when I selected research in my previous experiment with the homesteading book, that the output was cleaner and less redundant with the research while providing source materials to fact check what was produced. And that really kind of helps putting any type of fears that I have to rest, because I was real nervous about putting together a nonfiction book and relying on artificial intelligence. And since some of what artificial intelligence has sourced online, some of it is accurate, some of it is inaccurate. So I was able to double check some of those things. Now, then all I had to do after this was copy and paste all relevant info from the outline generator over into there. It's just that simple. I mean, super easy. Now, side note, Dibbly Create just released fiction for content writer, and research isn't an option you have to worry about. So when you're using the research option for nonfiction, it's costing more tokens. Without it, it's less tokens, but it's not quite as good. So with fiction writing, we don't need to worry about that. Now, additional side note, what Dibbly Create has produced so far for fiction is actually quite good for a first draft. If you want to see me do a video about it, let me know inside the comments, because I've been dabbling with it and I actually kind of enjoy it. Now, after all that, I simply had to wait a couple minutes between each chapter before moving on to the next until I had a finished first draft. Keyword, first draft. What did I do though once the manuscript was complete? Well, as mentioned before, it's now time to take it through the whole process that I would do with my own manuscripts, the ones that I've written myself. Because again, it requires the same scrutiny you would for human-generated content. All right, I've got a normal editing process, but before I do jump into that, what I want to do every time that if I'm not writing the content, I'm going to double check that everything is clear. That way, there's no plagiarism going on right here. So what I did was, and I've done this for ghostwriters I've worked with, gosh, so long ago when I was hiring some for some different projects. But now we're dealing with artificial intelligence, and I want to make sure that there is no ands, ifs, or buts. And of course, you can see according to the screen right here, I ran it through ProWriting Aid's plagiarism checker, and it came back with 0 instances. So that definitely laid some of my fears to rest. So I'm super happy about that. Now comes the normal rounds of edits. Now this is typically what I will do is I will take a manuscript and I'll put it through Microsoft Word Editor. And Microsoft Word Editor is pretty good. There's a lot of people that just swear by it. They love it. They think it's freaking amazing. For me, I feel it's fairly rudimentary, and every now and then it just kind of highlights some issues that aren't really issues. So it kind of turns into a bit of a time suck. I will go through though with the Microsoft Word Editor, and it's just a simple quick pass. Okay, looking for typos, looking for any type of just wordy sentences, anything that it might identify, I'll check. But I don't spend too long on any one area because I go into the very next tool, which is ProWriting Aid. Now, I know this is a premium tool and not many people out there might be able to afford ProWriting Aid. You can find some other software that might do the same thing for you. Grammarly's got something. There's Ginger. There's any number of those, but I prefer ProWriting Aid. I got a lifetime license a long time ago. But at any rate, I put it through ProWriting Aid, and I'm a little bit more discerning about some of the corrections because I do find ProWriting Aid does a better job than Microsoft Word Editor. Again, this is my opinion, so if for some reason you disagree, that's totally fine. I get it. But I find it super helpful. So at any rate, I'll put it through ProWriting Aid, and I'll go through each one of the mistakes and issues that it has in there. And of course, I make sure that I focus on the type of writing when I'm going in through ProWriting Aid because it's very specific based on the niche in which you are writing. All right, and then the next step. This is the one that I find is the biggest game changer for me. For whatever reason, text-to-speech is one of the best ways I've been able to identify problems with a lot of my own content, and of course, you know, if you're hiring out and such. So what I'll do is with Microsoft Word, there is a text-to-speech feature, and I'll just sit back. I don't read along. All right, I just listen, because if you read along, sometimes your brain will block out some of those issues, some of the things that doesn't sound quite right. That's where you'll be able to kind of just sit back, and if you hear something funky, boom, stop, pause, make a correction, go back to the beginning of the sentence or the paragraph to make sure it flows just fine, and then continue on. This is probably the part that takes the longest of the other 2 edits. Those ones, you can literally do them pretty quick, and especially for like a 30,000 word manuscript, I mean, not long. Now the text to speech though, you're looking at 30,000 word manuscript. If you go at a pretty good clip, it can probably get done within an hour to 2 hours, probably a little closer to 2 hours with, you know, corrections and things like that made in between. At this point, I've got this manuscript, I've gone through, done a couple of self-edits here, and then now I'm ready to send it off to an editor. Now, what I will look at is the various phases of editing. There's developmental and structural editing, where we're just looking at the entire structure of the work. Is it all cohesive? Is it missing anything? Is it in the proper order? Then I move on to things like line editing and copy editing. This is where a lot of people are typically starting, because there's some folks who just don't bother with developmental and structural editing. They just go right into the line editing and copy editing, and that's definitely commendable. I think some editing is better than no editing whatsoever. And then the final phase, of course, is proofreading, making sure that it is showroom ready, that it's polished, any typos are taken care of before you send it out to press, because you don't want to publish a complete work of garbage. We want to make sure everything is meticulous. Now, between those phases, I put it through 3 rounds of edits again. So I get it back from the developmental and structural editing standpoint. I go ahead and I do that 3 rounds, send it back over to the editor. Now, of course, naturally, I'm doing the corrections that the editor has given me and then going through the self-edits. It gets it to where it's super, super clean. Now, do you need to be so meticulous about it? That's entirely up to you. But for me, I take a lot of pride in the books that I publish. I want to make sure that if somebody sees that my name is behind it, that it's good. But I've got a little bit of insights I want to share with you. I'm a bit more strapped for time since I'm focused on an 8-book series launch. I'm not sure if you heard about it. So I saved myself a lot of that time and energy by hiring a pro through Dibbly's freelance marketplace. Dibbly Create has been my preferred writing tool over the past year for a variety of reasons. Their cloud-based writing software is absolutely great. What it does is it offers me access anywhere and anytime. I can even use it offline, so all I have to do is get back on the internet and Dibbly Create will sync and save my progress. Love that. Also, they have AI integration. Yes, artificial intelligence is built into it. Do you need to use it? No, not by any stretch, but you're going to find it super helpful because it helps in things like book descriptions, niche research, outlines, and even, well, as you see in this video, content writing. They also have a prompt library. You don't need to be a maverick, go over to some different artificial intelligence companies and you have to figure out how to do the right prompt in order to get the right thing coming back to you. Not with Dibbly Create. They get it all set with the prompt library. Hundreds of these thinking things. Maybe it's not quite hundreds. It's probably getting to that point, but you can create press releases, social media posts, search engine optimized articles, and even get help developing your fiction work through character building, twist book endings, flash fiction, and so much more. But what sets Dibbly Create apart from the rest of the writing software on the market today isn't just their use of artificial intelligence, but their direct integration with the Dibbly freelance marketplace. This makes Dibbly Create the one-stop shop for all your writing and publishing needs. Get all you need covered in every possible niche for authors from fiction to nonfiction and everything else in between. Do you need an editor, narrator, illustrator, designer, or even writer? Dibbly has what you need. Take the Dibbly Create Pro plan for a free 7-day test drive when you visit dalelinks.com/DibblyCreate. And feel free to browse Dibbly's freelance marketplace when you visit dalelinks.com/Dibbly. Special thanks and shout out to my longtime sponsors, Dibbly, for your support. So when I needed an editor, all I had to do was go to Chat Kip inside the dashboard and request some recommendations. And once I had a few recommendations, I visited app.dibbly.com to find my freelancer and open a conversation with her about my project. Now keep in mind, you can browse Dibbly's deep roster of incredible freelancers, so you're not simply limited to what Chat Kip shares with you. It is rather convenient, but remember, it's not the only options. Now just use the filter when you get over to Dibbly and you can narrow it down to exactly what you need. Allison Whitney was my editor. Here's a little bit about Allison. She has a degree in English literature and language with a minor in history, 12 years of diverse editing experience, including novels, textbooks, and children's books. She initially worked as a proofreader for a textbook company, and Allison is a world record holding power lifter. Say what? Yeah. Incredible. I won't fight her on any corrections that she puts together there. But all joking aside, super fascinating. It's really cool that when I look at the freelancer I'm working with, they're not just like, hey, this is an editor. This is actually a human being who's going to walk you through the whole process. So that is very reassuring. So right out the get-go, it was a perfect match working with Allison. Her very first message, she said, "I'm excited to be part of this project alongside you. Here's an overview of your editing package and the approach I'll be taking. The editing package is for a line edit. This means I will be checking for consistency, phrasing, redundancy and wordiness, clarity and cohesion, transitional elements, increasing precision and word choice. And I will also do a copy edit while I do that. I was also curious how involved you wanted to be with this. Usually all of the small edits I will make directly, and if there are bigger ones, I will do them in suggesting mode. However, if you'd rather I just make the needed changes and reach out about anything I'm unsure of, I can do that too. Just let me know your preference." So we ended up having some back and forth, and I was very honest with her. I was like, look, the more hands-off I can kind of be on this project, the better. And the reason is, again, I'm working on my own 8-book series, and part of this series is, being able to explore and show you that there are options out there. Should you not want to, like, say, go through line editing, and maybe you just wanted a different type of editing for your content, you can always hire them out for something like that. But I felt like the copy editing and line editing was the most important to make sure that everything was kind of reading as it should. I did notice that a couple structural things she did kind of move around. That was really nice. She could have easily told me, like, nah, I'm not going to do that. And in some instances, she even went in there and put in additional passages to make something a bit more cohesive. I really loved that about working with her. So in her follow-up message, as soon as she kind of dug into the project, she said, "All the edits were pretty straightforward. However, there are a couple of big ones for you to look at in chapter 1. I did quite a lot of heavy editing in this chapter. The first you'll see is that I added a paragraph to reference chapter 10. Some of these ideas in chapter 1 are also mentioned again in chapter 10. I did this to help set up the reader's expectations and emphasize the continuity of the concepts discussed throughout the book. That way, when they get to chapter 10, they know it's intentional and not an oversight. The other big changes I made were to avoid repetitive content. Feel free to let me know if you need any adjustments or if you'd rather put together something yourself for me to plug in there. I'm not married to those paragraphs and won't take it personally if you want to axe them." And in the conclusion, there was a framework of characters worked in, but it was a little confusing. As the reader, I felt like I should have memory of it from previously in the book, but we didn't use it anywhere else. So here I left a comment with a suggestion to make it a bit more cohesive. So there were, for whatever reason, we got to the conclusion, and there was this concept introduced of various names, and it seemed like what AI was trying to do was, I don't know, paint like a picture, like try to deliver an example, like, hey, I'm going to go ahead and tell this through story. But it was real sudden. It was a little abrupt. I feel like, as Allison said, if it was mentioned somewhere earlier in the book, there was some type of context that would have worked. Now, she's such a sweetheart. She went in there and tried to make it work. And when the both of us went back through it, now I went through it and I felt like, okay, this is a little better. Gave some context and it made the conclusion a little bit thicker. But I asked her a very good question was, could we just strip it out? Will it make any difference if we just pull that storytelling element out there and just close it out as it is? And she was like, you know what? I think that probably is the best idea. So we ended up axing that all together. So how does the first draft compare to the final draft? Now, rather than reading everything beat for beat, I'll share the original copy right here. Then here's the copy with the editor's notes and corrections. Then here's the final copy. Finally, here's what Allison, the editor, said. Knowing this book was an AI-written book, I focused on improving the overall quality and giving it a more human-like feel. Overall, I worked on reducing repetitive word choices that are common in AI-generated text, spreading them out more evenly instead of letting them appear in every chapter. I also corrected sentence punctuation to avoid comma splices and broke up some of the more complex sentences to create a smoother flow. Some of the bigger issues we see with AI were also here as well. For instance, in Chapter 1, there was a lot of repetitive content that needed to be reworked. In Chapter 3, the text switched between second and third person, so I adjusted it to maintain a consistent point of view. The conclusion was confusing because it introduced new characters for the first time, so I restructured this section for clarity. The rest of the edits were general improvements for flow and style tweaks to enhance the overall readability. So it was really kind of cool getting a lot of these notes from Allison. It really kind of shared a little bit more about how you can't entirely trust artificial intelligence to provide the best possible first draft every single time. There might be some hype bros out there that truly believe that their writing software can be able to do that. I am just going to call horse manure on that one right there. It still requires editing. This further proves that AI isn't perfect and still very much requires human intervention. Could I have just taken the first draft and published it? Sure, but would readers be happy about what they got? Possibly, but with what my editor shared, it would have been a tough read. This is why if you plan to use generative AI for producing high-quality books, you absolutely must run your manuscript through the same systems you would for a human-generated book. It is essential if you plan to build a long-term sustainable publishing business and a trustworthy author brand. I asked Allison for any last-minute insights or advice, and here's what she said. AI isn't going anywhere, and the faster we can learn to harness it, the better off we'll be. As AI continues to reshape the writing landscape, it's crucial to understand how to use it effectively without losing your unique voice. Whether you're writing your first book, a blog post, or polishing a draft, AI can be a powerful ally when you use it thoughtfully. Think of AI as a tool to enhance your creativity and streamline your process. It can help you spot errors, suggest improvements, and tailor content to match your audience. However, you have to maintain a balance. Use AI to handle the technical side, but make sure the heart of your writing remains authentically yours. Always, always, always review and refine AI-generated content to align with your vision and style. Remember, AI should be used to help you, not replace you. Stay true to your voice, keep up with the latest developments, and always apply the final human touch. This way, you can leverage the best of both worlds, innovation and authenticity, in your writing journey. Oh, my Lord, can we stand up and applaud? I really love exactly what Allison said. This paints the perfect picture. And now that she's gone through and edited some AI content, you can see that she understands the use of something like this. So the question remains, can AI write a book that's not trash? Absolutely. In the same way humans can write books that aren't trash, AI can do the same, but both still require the same level of scrutiny through various levels of editing and proofreading. So what comes next in this 6-part video series? We're going to start to dial in the marketing. Yes, we're going to look into the keyword research. We're going to go ahead and file some ISBNs. We're going to put together some book descriptions. We're going to get everything polished out going forward. And of course, beyond that, we're going to go ahead and publish that content. So make sure that you follow this video series as we go along here. This is going to be a lot of fun. And at the very end of this, after we're done publishing, we're also going to promote this stuff. So that way you know exactly what to do from ideation to publication and beyond. While we're talking about this video series, why don't you pop back in over here on the previous video where we talked about writing books with AI, and we go real deep on that. You'll see exactly what I was talking about with the homesteading book, or check out this other video that YouTube suggests. I'll see you in either one.